Peace everyone, Unmask Art here, and today I'm going to be doing another pastel tutorial for everyone. Haven't done one in a while, so it's good to be back and doing one. I'm going to be using just the pastel pencils as opposed to using the combination of the soft pastel squares and the pencils. So just pencils for today, and I've had a few requests to do furry animals. I've had a couple requests to do a dog. I had many requests. I get new requests every day for tutorials, and I wish that I had all the time in the world to do all of them every single time I got a request, because I get so many. But I thought that I could kind of knock a few of the requests out all at once by doing a furry animal and a dog. So I thought that this would be a good project to kind of do as a tutorial. Get to touch on a little bit of fur techniques and doing a dog, which everybody loves dogs, so here we are. Hello Jamie, Olivia, Steve, Christine, John, PV Art. Thank you all so much for coming to the stream. Very glad to have you. Hope everybody had a lovely weekend. My weekend was great. And let's just get right into this. So before I start actually coloring anything with the pencils, I do have the line art and the reference photo for this particular dog, and it is in the video description. If you click on the link, it will take you over to my Patreon page, which will have a download for both the line art and the reference photo, with a little color palette off to the side to help you identify the colors, the dominant colors that appear into this dog here. It is a golden retriever dog, so it's going to have plenty of yellows and kind of the golden browns, and it's got a really nice shiny puppy fur, so plenty of light and shadows and things to practice with this piece, so I thought it was a really good reference photo. Anyways, let's just get right into this. I always like to start with the eyes and the nose when I'm doing dogs and other animals that have, those very distinct facial features. I think capturing the eyes and the nose and the positioning and the size of those are really, really important for capturing the likeness of an animal. It's very similar to when you do portraits of people. Getting the eyes, nose, and mouth in the right location is really the key to getting that appearance to have the likeness of whoever it is you're drawing or whatever it is you're drawing. So I'm just going to start with the eyes here. And I'm using the black pencil, and I have it sketched out, so I'm just going to come in here and sketch in where the darkest parts of the eyes are. I have the pupil here as well. It's very important to make sure you have a nice sharp pencil, and what I'm using for this is one of these sanding sharpening blocks to get the really fine point. Oh, hello Shiny. Let's see, who else did I miss? Cece, awesome. Anna, good to see you. Michelle, Chrissy, awesome to have you as well. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is for you. It's afternoon for me. But super glad you're all here. I didn't really have this this stream planned out all that well. I was sitting here, and if you watch me over on Patreon, because I stream over there every week as well, I was talking about how I think I'm just going to start doing live streams just whenever I feel like it, and I often feel like doing streams on Mondays. And so I was sitting here and I was thinking, what would be fun to draw? And so I decided a puppy. I started looking at reference photos. I just got this reference photo maybe 2 hours ago, even less than 2 hours ago, really. And decided to just go ahead and create the line art for it and the quick color palette for everyone and upload it and then start streaming. That was kind of my game plan, and that was about all the planning that went into this live stream. I mean, most of you didn't even find out I was streaming until just a few minutes ago, so I apologize for that. But I think it's better to stream with little notice than to not stream at all. So that was kind of my thought process there. So I decided to just go for it. And I figured it'd be more fun to stream today than to schedule it out and then stream tomorrow. Alright, I'm going to grab a dark brown now. That was just black that I was using. This is 635, and by the way, all the pencils that I'm using I've used in the past. It's just the Carbothello pencils, and I have a link for these specific set of pencils in the description. So if you don't have these pencils and you use pastels, then you are missing out on some fantastic pencils. These pencils are perfect. And I'm just going to kind of fill in the irises here in our dog with this brown. Because the eyes are so small, it's more important to just make sure you have that nice highlight and bring a little bit of color in here. But they mostly just appear black in the reference photo. Michaela. Oh, okay. All right, Michaela. Apologize for pronouncing your name wrong. Let's see here. I'm going to grab just a slightly brighter brown color, and this is, what is this? This is 680, and I'm just going to use it to lighten up the one side of the eye, the one side of the irises, just a little bit. It won't show up nearly as much until we do the fur around the eyes, but it will make a small difference. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of blue, kind of a light blue. This is 435, and I'm going to color in the nose. And the reason I'm coloring in the nose with blue is because the nose being reflective, it's reflecting the sky above, and the sky is blue, so the nose reflects blue. It's kind of like water. Water is blue, or appears to be blue, because it reflects the sky. Just add a little bit of blue here, and then we can come in with our darker color, our blacks and dark grays. I think I'm going to grab like a cool gray color. Let's see here. Yeah, here we go. This is a kind of more of a neutral gray, actually. This is 708. I'm going to just come in here and start adding in some texture into the nose and just work around the highlights a little bit, just the brighter areas where the nose is highlighted. Got plenty of layers we can do with these pastel pencils, and I am using the Clairefontaine pastel mat, which I also have a link for in the description. So all of the supplies that I'm using are linked in the description, just in case you want to know what I'm using. When do you decide to just go straight in with black as opposed to doing undercoloring first? I guess it depends on the subject and the medium. I mean, if I'm using pastel pencils, or pastels in general, and I'm doing like a portrait, or in this case a puppy portrait, I like to cement in where the eyes are, and usually the eyes in the nose in this case are very dark in comparison to the rest of the picture. And so I like to make sure that I have those established in the very beginning, because like I said, the likeness that I want to capture with this particular piece is determined by the placement of the eyes and the nose. Everything else can be a little bit different and it's still going to look like the same dog. And so that's why I like to grab the black and just kind of cement those features in first. But yeah, when it comes to like colored pencils, I don't generally do that. If you've ever watched me draw a portrait with colored pencils, I actually always do the eyes first, but I do the scleras of the eyes before I do the irises, which is usually a lighter grayish green color or something along those lines. I mean, if you were to do the fur before the eyes on the puppy, you know, it probably would still work out fine for you. It's just I personally like to go this route because it's the features that dominate the portrait in the first place. Could I please zoom in? I can zoom in a little bit. See, the unfortunate thing is I'm not. I have to move my camera up. Let me see if I can do that. I guess it would have made a little bit more sense to do that. So let me go ahead and move the camera and see if I can zoom in a little bit more. There. I don't want it to be blurry. Sometimes I have a problem because I can't really tell if it's blurry when I zoom in. Sometimes if I zoom in too much, it just stays blurry. But hopefully that looks okay. Let me know if it's blurry at all. If it's blurry at all, I'll probably have to zoom out a little bit. But now you should have a better view of what it is I'm doing. And what was I doing? Where's my gray pencil? Yes. So I'm just kind of filling in the nose with this gray color. This is that 708 color that I was using before I tried zooming in. And I'm just kind of using it to fill in the nose before adding any more colors to it. It's better? Perfect. Thanks for the suggestion of zooming in. You know, I try not to look at the camera too much since I am the one drawing. So when you guys say something, I'll try to fix it as quickly as I can. But yeah, if you guys have any questions throughout the stream, you know, please don't hesitate to ask. I say it often. I love questions, and I would say that I don't get enough of them. I would say that I don't get enough questions because I like them so much. The next color I'm using is 400, and this is just a bit deeper blue, and I'm going to use this for the transitions between the dark part of the nose and the highlights. And I don't really want this color to be fully saturated, which is why I'm kind of adding it over top of that dark gray, because as those colors kind of mix on the paper, it pulls out the blue a little bit and it's not so blue, because I don't want my dog here to look like it has a blue nose, but it really actually does have mostly bluish nose. It's bluish, black, gray kind of colors, and so mixing these grays and these blues together helps balance out that saturation so that it doesn't look too blue, to the point that it really looks like a blue nose. And I'm just going really slow and kind of dotting in this blue around the spots that I want it to be blue. I haven't blended anything out. The tool that I'll be using to blend is a little blending stump that actually comes with the set of the Carbothello pencils. And here you can start to see the softening on this side of the details, just mixing those colors together very slightly. And I'm going to go back to my black. Do you still blend with pencils? Yes. So when I'm using the pastel pencils, I actually do a lot of the blending with just the pencils themselves. And you won't see that so much with the nose here, but you'll see it a lot more once I get into the fur. So now I'm going to start using the black to darken up the darkest parts of the nose. For instance, these nostrils are very, very dark. I want to make sure that they show up that way. And the gray front of the nose is a darker gray than what I have it right now. So this is kind of an example of using the pencils to blend. So I'm using a really, really light touch in order to mix that dark, that medium gray and the black onto the paper without making it completely black. Because I just want the nostrils to really be black, but the rest of the nose I don't want to be black, so I'm kind of using the black to mix all those colors by just using a really light touch. Very, very light touch. How do you keep a good mindset when drawing if it goes wrong? Well, I think that to help avoid that, first off, Safi, is to plan your artwork before you ever start. So that's something that's something that I stress a lot throughout my tutorials and pretty much everything that I ever do. Is I always stress the importance of planning. And to use this piece as an example, what I've done to plan this piece is I created the line art, I created the baseline kind of color palette that, as I mentioned, the line art and reference photo is in the video description to download for free if you want. And those two preparation stages really help me feel confident moving on with this piece. So even though I've never drawn this dog before or colored it with pastel pencils, I feel confident enough to live stream me doing it because those preparation stages, they kind of give me the path, the direction that I need to not make the mistakes that I would make otherwise if I just looked at this picture, grabbed some pencils, and started drawing without sketching the line art or anything like that. So I would say that's probably the most important part of keeping a good mindset if something goes wrong. Now, if something else were to go wrong, say I don't know, maybe I dropped my pencil and it like left a big black mark like through his shoulder or something. There'd really be no way for me to lift this black pencil off the white paper in which I don't want to color, because I want the paper to be just left plain around him. That might cause a problem in which I would have to add something later to correct it, but I would just try to, I don't know, I'd just try to come up with something that would make it correctable. Okay, let's grab a light gray. I'm going to grab a lighter gray here, and I'm going to use this for the highlights a little bit to pull out some more of that blue and to just rebalance where my highlights are showing up. Very, very slowly adding this color. This gray, by the way, is 720. Do you use a blade to sharpen your pencils or sharpener? I use 3 different sharpeners for my pastel pencils. Some of my pastel pencils aren't centered very well. They're not centered very well, in which case, here's a good example, I think. Yeah, you can see this pencil here. It's off center. I can still use a pencil sharpener, but this pencil is off center, and that makes this wood part come up higher in a pencil sharpener. Then I have others like my black pencil here that just refuse to be sharpened by a pencil sharpener, so I use a knife for it, and then I use this this is a Faber-Castell sandpaper sharpener block that you can buy for like $1 or something, really cheap, and that I use to get the really fine points on my pencils and things, to add the final touches of detail when I need them. But I try to do that like minimal at best, so I'm not playing around with it too much. But those are the 3 methods that I use to sharpen my pastel pencils. I would say maybe 7 out of 8 or 7 out of 10 times my Helix manual crank pencil sharpener works really well to sharpen my pastel pencils to the degree that I need them sharpened. So in this case, I'm using my sandpaper block right now to sharpen my medium gray pencil to a really fine point, so that I can get the last little bit of detail on the nose that I want. And the sandpaper blocks, you really can't get a better sharpener, because look at that tip for the pastel pencil. You can't get that kind of tip anywhere other than using the sandpaper block. So I'm just coming in here and adding last little bumps of detail through the highlight on the nose. Yeah, it is a bit annoying to have to deal with pencils that aren't centered properly in the stick or whatever, the wood holder. Yeah, Prismacolor has some issues with that quite often. Even the luminance pencils, I have 3 or 4 in my set that are non-centered, and that drive me crazy quite a bit. This blue here you can see is off center as well. I'm going to try to sharpen it with my pencil sharpener. See if I can get lucky. Yeah, I did not get lucky at all. So that's when I pull out my X-Acto knife and just cut off one side. I can cut it off like this, and then I can use my sanding block to get the tip that I want. Pastels are usually a really quick medium for me to use, and if I didn't have to deal with the issue of sharpening them and then breaking so much, then they'd be like twice as fast. Yeah, see, now you can see that I have a really nice tip on the pencil. I'm going to use this blue. This is the 435 blue, again, the really light one. Then I'm going to add some more highlight dots into the nose. Very, very subtle changes for the highlights, but necessary nonetheless. And I'm going to even use this for the kind of eyelid that surrounds the bottom part of the eye. You'll barely be able to see it, but it's like right where the eyelid separates from the fur, the skin, and the eye itself. And it won't really show up all that much until I add the dark fur around it, which I'm going to start with that now, actually. And for that, I'm going to use the 642 color. Just add some of the skin right around the eye here. Do a little bit on this side. There we go. I'm going to add my gray, and this gray here is going to be like the transition color where the skin and the fur start to meet. Yeah, the water line. How well do you think Ninja Purple would work on nose to enhance dark areas? So on this nose, you're going to be looking at Ninja Blue. Not so much purple here on the nose. I do have some Ninja Purple, that 642 that I added right there at the waterline of the eye. Thank you, Jamie, for that. And then the Ninja Purple will find its way into the belly of the puppy down here, where the skin starts to show up more and you have that kind of patchy hair on the underbelly. That's where you'll see some of the Ninja Purple, but for the fur, won't really show up. For the nose, like I said, it's more of a Ninja Blue that sneaks in there. All right, there we go. Now what I'm going to do is start mapping out the fur, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get kind of a medium brown, looking at which I might want to go more red. I'm thinking of going more red. Yeah, I think I'll go more red with the brown. Am I using pastel pencils? Yes. Yeah. This is definitely a pastel pencil. Totally not paying attention to what's important. Yeah, the pastel pencils I'm using are the Carbothellos, and link is in the description for them. Does anyone know if photos naturally tone down the color orange? No, not necessarily. It would depend on the white balance of the camera. If the camera's white balance is cooler, then it will pull out the yellows from oranges. Whereas if the white balance is warmer, then you'll actually be pushing more yellows and oranges. So yeah, it depends on the white balance of the camera, but it wouldn't naturally tone down the oranges. It would be completely determined by the white balance. Getting close to 40,000 subscribers. Yes, Jamie, I am getting very, very close. And I would say that I would say by the end of the week, I will be over 40,000. So anyways, I'm going to start mapping out the fur, and I'm going to use 640. I decided to go a little bit red with my brown. So this brown has a bit more red in it than, say, this brown here. This 625 is much more yellow. So I went with a more reddish brown. And this is how I'm going to map out the fur. So if you look at the reference photo, you'll notice that the dog has a nice little dark triangle right here above the nose. So I'm just going to create that little triangle right there, just like that. Then you'll notice that his muzzle shape is defined by a couple lines, like right here, this line here, and it just deepens right there into a little pocket. And then also on the other side, his muzzle is kind of like this, and then it wraps up to around his eye, sort of like this, and comes down from his cheek over here. This is kind of the darker spot of his fur. Now this is going to look pretty awful in the beginning, but this is how I would suggest mapping out the fur before trying to fill everything in. And I find it a little bit easier than, working one eye and switching colors constantly. So this is the way I do it, and this is the way that I would suggest you do it as well. It just makes it a bit more simplified. And then he has this eyebrow, or kind of upper eyelid here around his eye. It kind of has that deeper pocket right there. And then he has his actual eyebrow coming across like this. And this part curls over, and you can see where his skin is starting to wrinkle. Kind of has this weird shape here. Just like that. It has same thing on the other eye. He has the eyelid, the upper eyelid kind of crease right there. And then he has another flap of skin coming down like this. And just his eyebrow starts to wrinkle up in this part like that, kind of like that. A lot of this is correctable, especially when you're working with pastels. It's very, very correctable. So just try to be as accurate as you can in the beginning, but there's plenty of leeway to correct the potential of making a mistake here. And then he has this gap in between his face and the ear that is very dark. So I'm just going to fill that gap in like that. And then I'm going to do his mouth down here just a little bit, right under there, separating his chin from his mouth. Very simple. How are pastel pencils compared to colored pencils? What are a few differences, ways to blend these types of pencils? Okay, so I would say comparing pastel pencils to colored pencils is not something that you would do, because the pastels, they work so differently, they feel so differently, and they're so picky about what paper you use them on that a comparison between those is very similar to like comparing sculpting to oil painting. The fact that the shape of them are the same as a pencil is kind of deceptive, because they operate so differently between one another. Pastel pencils I would never use on anything other than Clairefontaine pastel matte, whereas colored pencils, I use them on a ton of different paper. In fact, some people even like using the pastel matte with colored pencils. But the blending is not the same at all. You can use a wet blender to blend pastel pencils, but I find it pointless because you end up having to wait for things to dry. So I would say, like, if you want to get into like the differences in like how to use them, I would say pastel pencils are just friendlier than regular pencils because it gives you the option to kind of correct mistakes. You can work light over dark and get deeper blacks, and they're faster, but they're a bit more painful to sharpen. That would be like the quick and easy way to describe their differences, but it's hard to even compare them because they are so different between one another. All right, now I'm going to draw in the separation of his other ear over here. He's got a little bit of a shadow on the bottom of his ear, right in this section. And then here where the ear folds over, he's got a nice dark shadow right in here. So I'm just going to color that in real quick. And let's see, he's got a little bit of a dark spot right up there, and maybe a little dark spot on this part of his ear over here. And I'm just going to stay on his face since I'm all zoomed in here and everything. And I'm going to switch colors. And I'm going to go to the lightest color, which is 105. Now this color here is a little bit too yellow for what I want it to look like. It's a bit peachy. So I'm actually going to incorporate a little bit of gray. And I think this is the gray I'm going to use. This is 700. So I'm going to leave that to the side. I'm going to color in where these highlights start to show up a bit. And for these first few layers, to be honest with you, for the first few layers, pencil direction is not nearly as important as adding in the details later on. But it's always good to maintain a very disciplined pencil stroke. So I would suggest you pay close attention to the direction that you're moving your pencils and get the fur texture established from the very beginning. That way you just get used to it and you can do it without thinking in the later layers. So even though you can't really see this texture with this first layer with this pencil, I'm going to just keep following the direction and the length of the fur that is showing up in this puppy here, just because I am a disciplined artist and I follow my own rules. And the pencil's rather dull, so I'm not going for any detail yet. Just coloring in the fur, giving it a nice base layer for the other colors that I am going to be using to create the look that I want. I'll be incorporating some more of that orange brown color into the fur after this to start bringing in the oranges, because the golden retriever fur does have a lot of orange in it in the transitions and where the shadows are, and separating the shadows from the highlights, you get all of those really nice orange colors. I need to hurry along. This is what many people would consider the ugly stage of the work, and it is no doubt very, very ugly looking. But I can assure you, as I add more layers, this will start to look like fur. But I am in no hurry here, so hopefully you guys have plenty of time, because I am going to be drawing for some time. This process can be quite time consuming. As long as you're taking your time on your projects, you're most likely going to enjoy the outcome. So I have no intention of rushing through. I want my puppy here to look very, very close to the reference photo. And once you do this process with the head, the strategy that I'm employing here with marking out kind of the structure of the fur, and then coming in with the base color for the highlights, and then coming in with some of the other colors to bridge that gap between the shadows and the highlights, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the puppy as well. So on the body, the strategy is going to be exactly the same as I do here on the face. Alright, now let's bring in some oranges, and I'm feeling like this color here is about where I want to be. So this color here is 680, and let's see, I'm just going to start over here on the ear. I think that's a good starting point. Now I'm going to start paying really, really close attention to where the direction of the fur is going. So now you'll start to see some of that fur texture coming through a little bit more. Paying more attention to that direction. And this is still going to be a base color. Still a base color. But now I'm going to be mapping out that direction that the fur is going a bit more carefully. Because what I'll do after this is I'll take my blending stump here and soften all of this texture just like this. And then as I'm blending, I'm also moving in the same direction that I'm drawing the fur. And then as I add more layers to that, all of that texture will still be there, and it will look like fur. It will look a lot like fur. Got to work around those highlights that I established. The benefit, and one of the differences that I was mentioning before about colored pencils and pastel pencils, is that we can work in both directions, but just because they're a little bit more friendly in bringing back some of the highlights doesn't mean that I shouldn't try my best to still work around the highlights and not have to add them back in repeatedly. Have I done an animal in pastels before, or just people? No, I've done several dogs in pastels. None on camera though. When was this? Actually, it was last year. I think September. Last year, September, I was a guest artist at the International Dog Show here in Katowice. I made a vlog about it, and I did maybe 3 or 4 live pastel drawings at the dog show for just guests that were there. They could walk by and watch me. And And I drew several dogs for obvious reasons. I was at a dog show. And I have those tucked away somewhere, but I didn't do those. I didn't do those with pastel pencils at all. I just brought my soft pastels, and did it rather quickly. They're kind of more impressionistic, I guess, would be the way I would describe them. They're not the length of detail that I'm going here with this puppy, and they're a bit bigger, more just a portrait style. But I don't think I ever actually shared those. I never took pictures of them or anything. I just kind of packed them away, and they just sit in the drawer over there. Oh, hello, Leontine. So glad you were able to make it to a live stream. Always a pleasure seeing you here. Well, Julie, I think that if you just give drawing your dog a try, you might be surprised at what you're able to do. Just take your time and, sketch. Make an accurate sketch first, and then transfer that sketch over to your paper. Establish your color palette. Look whatever reference photo you take of your dog to create. Just take the time to create an accurate color palette. Select your colors, identify the colors that show up in the photograph, and then go for it. That planning stage of your work can really just make all the difference in the world for how well or how bad your drawings come out. And I think it's something that's often overlooked way too much, and that's why I stress it in every single tutorial that I do. I always stress planning. And if you're not sure how to plan, if you're not quite sure how to plan your work, I have a number of tutorials that I think I kind of go over the planning stage. I kind of went over the planning a bit at the beginning of this live stream, and I do it with all of my work. I plan everything that I do. None of the pieces that I do are just, I don't just grab a picture and then start coloring it. I always do a color palette. I always identify, I look at it. I do a lot of looking. I look at my reference photos a lot because it's so important to know what's going on in the picture. You have to look at photographs through the eyes of an artist rather than a spectator. A spectator just looks at photos in awe, usually, if they're good or whatever. But an artist that is working to create a picture from a reference photo, they'll look at the reference photo differently. A good artist, anyway. They'll look at it completely different than somebody that is just looking to admire it. And I'll spend several minutes doing nothing but looking at my reference photo so that I can identify what is making this two-dimensional image look like what it is. Because at the end of the day, a photograph is nothing of what you perceive it to be. It's just a bunch of colors, actually dots, like teeny tiny little dots of one particular color. And the only thing that makes it look like what it is the value and color changes from one dot to the other. And if you can just imagine that all you have to do is create those million dots in the exact color, placement, and value, then you can create whatever image you're looking at. But in a lot of cases, you can simplify the image by finding the dominant colors that appear over and over, and the image from, you know, a million dots just becomes, you know, 100,000, because you're using the same colors over and over. So I look, that's how I kind of look at my reference photos. I look at, you know, what color can I use over and over again to establish like the base color. You can see here I've on the fur I've only used 3 colors so far. Use that kind of reddish brown, then that light peachish color for the highlights, and now I'm using this 680 color to, you know, start establishing some of the texture in the color changes between the highlights and the shadows. Not a whole lot, and it's getting close. It's getting there as far as looking like the reference photo. Still got plenty of mixing and blending and layers to do, but for the most part it's starting to come together. Okay, Steve, you have a lovely day. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next Patreon live stream. Yes, Sarah, that is definitely a good way of putting it. Draw what you see, not what you think you see. That's a really common mistake when it comes to just drawing in general. Like if you're drawing with graphite, it happens a lot with portraits and foreshortening. So if you know what foreshortening is, it's when, like, if you're drawing a pencil, it's very easy to draw a pencil like this, but if somebody were to turn the pencil and point it at you, it's very difficult to draw it foreshortened, and it's even harder when you're doing hands. Like if you draw a hand like this, like a fist or whatever, it's usually relatively easy. But if you draw like a hand with their fingers like pointing towards you, like that hand would look really weird drawn. So what ends up happening is people start drawing things what they think they should look like as opposed to what they actually look like, and that makes drawings not usually come out looking very good or realistic, because photographs can look strange as well. Take a picture at the wrong angle and all of a sudden you have objects looking rather strange and unusual. Yes, Chrissy, I definitely have some Aussie fans. It's fantastic. I'll have plenty of friends when I visit Australia for the first time. Plenty of friends to visit when I go to Australia. I don't have a very good perception of how large Australia is. Like, can you drive from one side of Australia to the other in a day? I don't know if that's possible. I've never looked into the actual size of Australia, but I think I have a number of you that are on the east side, if I'm not mistaken. Chrissy, you live on the east side of Australia, don't you? Does Australia have multiple time zones? That's something I actually am not aware of. Like, is the east side and the west side in the same time zone? Is that how large Australia is? Okay, no way you can drive the distance in a day? Okay. Yeah, Cece, we should. We gotta go to Australia. Cece, you haven't been to Australia yet, have you? Australia or New Zealand? Yeah, I think. Okay, so you are on the east side, Chrissy. I think there's a number of you that are on the east side that follow me. Wow, there's a 4 hour time gap from east and west? Okay, is it 4 hours or two? Okay, Jeff lives Western Australia. Okay. Well, is there anything cool in Central Australia? Maybe we'll all just meet in the middle. Maybe one day, like if if I start making more than just enough to live off of doing art, then I can do a bit more traveling and do some art meetups and things like that. Uh, or if there was like a venue or something that I could set up like do a class, kind of travel to the country, do a pastel or a colored pencil or something, do a class, teach an art class for like a weekend, and that'd be super rad. That'd be like a dream come true. That'd be awesome. You guys gotta reach out to some of your art venues and see if they'll invite me to do a class, and I'll buy the plane ticket. They just have to host the class, and yeah, traveling art class. Oh, hello, Deborah. All right, so our dog is starting to come together. I'm gonna grab. Let's see. I think I'm gonna grab this color. I feel like I need some grayish yellow, and this color here is 685. I'm just gonna do a bit of experimenting. I might not even like this color, but maybe we'll see. Yeah, actually I do like this color. It adds a nice golden yellowish tone to the fur. So I'm just going to sprinkle some of this color in here. Again, paying attention to my direction. That's another thing that I really like about the pastel pencils, and kind of brings up another difference between the pastel pencils and the colored pencils, is just how much flexibility there is with the shading and the coloring. Because here I'm taking this color, and it's more of a toning color, adding some hints of yellowish gold into the fur before doing any blending. Oh, okay, Chrissy. Well, I think okay. So Aussie or Australia is what they would be heading into their summer, right? Like winter is coming to a close in Australia. Am I thinking correctly there? Pretty sure that's correct. Can you mix oil pastels and chalk pastels? No. No, you cannot. So winter ends September 1st. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I was thinking since summer was coming to an end, winter was... I don't know. Or no, since summer was coming to an end here, we're coming into fall, which means we're coming into winter, which means you guys are coming into summer? Or something? Or, yeah. I don't know. But yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense now. I knew it was opposite, just hard to think about while drawing. I love the conversations that we get into on the live streams. It's the best part. It's the best part of all the live streams. So if there's anybody new to the live stream, this is exactly what to expect, and the conversations can get even more off the wall over on Patreon as well, because over there we just totally hang out and draw together. Anyways, still filling in some of the areas here on the fur with this golden brown color. I'd like to trip there, have a friend that lives. Yeah, that would be cool. I've been wanting to go to Australia for a very, very long time. There's two places that I have to visit 100% in my lifetime. First, number one is Japan, and number two is Australia. I've always been really, really interested in visiting both of those places. When I was in the military, I tried to get stationed in Japan, but it did not, unfortunately, it did not happen. Closest I got was Washington, which was probably the least like Japan that I could ever be. Alright, I'm going to grab a bit of gray now. And this gray is that 700 gray. There's actually a lot of gray that shows up in the fur, in the highlights. So I'm going to incorporate quite a bit of this. It's kind of another transitionary color, not in the brightest parts of the highlights, but kind of at the edges. The edges of the highlights is where this gray really starts to come in. Oh, hey, what's up, Chris? Been a little while since I got to see you in a live stream. I think after this layer I'll be ready to do a bit of blending with my blending stump, and then the fur will look really nice and soft. I will lose a tiny bit of the texture in the fur, but I'll be able to bring it back in the following layers, and getting that nice soft smooth look is going to be really, it's going to change the way this looks a lot. It's going to make it look a lot nicer. But I would say the first most important part is getting the colors and the contrast correct. There's still a bit of deepening in some of the wrinkles that I need to do, and I think the color I'll probably be using is kind of like this muted brown color that I have over here to deepen some of the fur, especially around the eyes, and accentuate the anatomy of our puppy here. Because right now it's looking, the fur's looking a little too bright between the separation of the colors and the highlights. But once I do some blending, though, that will soften quite a bit, and it will look a little bit more natural. Looks amazing. Keep it up. Well, thank you, Avatar Renji. I appreciate that. There we go. It's a decent amount of gray, I think. Maybe a little bit here on the eyebrows, a bit, the eyelid. All right, now I'm going to bring in that other brown, the 625, and I'm going to do some darkening here. I'm not going to add too much of this color because, like I said, I'm going to blend out after this, and it's going to spread. And I don't want the dark color to spread too much because I don't want it to like take over the entire image. So I'm going to just use it a little bit, and then when I blend, I'll use that to spread it out more as I need. But over here on this side of the face, the light source is coming from the right. So this part of the ear over here should be in cast shadow quite a bit. It's a bit too bright, so I need to darken that area a bit more over here, creating that nice shadow. There we go. And then here, separating the face from the ear. All of this is pretty dark. I just add a bit of this in here, a few little scratches of it in the direction that the fur is growing, and then across the nose here. This nose is way too bright on this side, so adding a bit of this before blending out will help darken that left side of the face. And then underneath the eye, add a little bit of that to pull into the fur. Let's see, where else? Side of the lip over here, darken that up a bit, and underneath jaw right there. And then underneath the nose as well, where it's actually like a darker gray, but I'm going to use some of this brown here to spread that out. Kind of his mustache looking area. It's got a little bit of a mustache going. Puppy with a mustache. Let's see. Add some of it here. And there's actually a cast shadow from his ear on the side of his face right here. Alright, now I'm going to darken up this flap of the ear a little bit before blending, and maybe a few spots here as well. Alright, let's go ahead and do a little bit of blending. So I'm going to grab my blending stump here, and I don't know, I think I'll just start here at the nose. And just start smoothing that color out, but paying attention to the direction that I'm smoothing. I want it to follow the direction that the fur is growing as well. And once I do this softening, this will cover up all the roughness that the pencil still has on the paper, because the paper still shows through a little bit. And once I cover that roughness up and kind of get rid of that grainy texture, I'll be left with a little bit more of a fur look, but a very soft, almost too soft fur. And then I'll use more layers of my pencils to create that texture again, but instead of the paper showing through, what I'll have is this soft fur showing through. And that will leave me with a much better looking puppy. Much more realistic looking fur as well. Right now it's just kind of a floating head, which never actually looks that great. But adding the rest of the puppy later on, once I get there, make this floating head look a little bit more better. The paper used really makes the difference when using pastels. Yes, Barbara, the paper that I use is exclusively the pastel mat, the Clairefontaine pastel mat that I have a link for in the description. If you're like practicing or whatever, you're just doing some sketches with pastels and you really, really know that you don't care about like how the final result looks, then you can maybe go with the cheaper papers just to do a bit of practicing. But if you're looking to create something that you're really proud of, then you just can't go with anything other than the pastel mat, because you'll just be disappointed with how the final product looks, because you'll never get anything that looks as good on any other paper than the pastel mat. I've used some of the UArt paper in the past, and that's also a really good one, but as far as like the way it feels when you're working on it, the pastel mat just is superior in that way. But you do get a little bit more ability to layer light on top of dark with the UArt paper than the pastel mat, but I don't generally have that issue of needing that extra mileage with the extra layers. So the pastel matte just works flawlessly for me. Hello, Tatiana. Up early enough for a stream, correct me if I'm wrong. When using the pastel pencils compared to colored pencils, you don't have to preserve your whites. Well, it's always a good idea, regardless of which one you're using, to preserve your whites to some degree, because even with the pastel pencils, you can work your white over top of your darker colors, but it's not going to show up as much as you might need it to. So it's just good practice. It's just good practice to preserve those highlights as you need them. Because the white specks that I have in the puppy's eyes here, I even preserved those. I didn't actually go back and use white to create that speck in the eye, which I'll probably still go back and reinforce that highlight. But now that I skipped it, it's going to actually show up even more when I do go back over it. So it's just good practice, and I think that it's best to always work around highlights, even if you're painting. And with painting, you can always go back to like the purest of white with just a nice opaque paint. I like to work around the highlights for two reasons. One is accuracy in the drawing. So if I can use the highlight as kind of like a landmark to establish where other details are, then I like to avoid them. And then the other reason is it's just easier to get them as bright as you want if you avoid darkening them at all anyway. Alright, I think I've gotten that pretty good. I am going to grab an even redder brown, and this is 655. I don't know, maybe I think I want to go darker. Actually, I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to use this one. This is even more red, and this is 645. And now I'm going to start adding in more layers, more contrast to my little puppy here. And I'm going to be barely touching the paper. I want the pencil to create some lines, not a whole bunch of lines, but some lines. And I'm just going to slowly build up my values here to the degree that I need them for the picture to look correct. And I'm going to be following the texture that I created throughout the coloring process so far, and create that richer and deeper fur texture that I've been establishing from the beginning. This is where the pencil direction and length discipline from the very beginning really outshines the more loose and just scribbly style of drawing, or coloring in this case, because you could have just kind of filled in the areas of the color with little to no regard as to the direction that you're moving the pencil, and then you could have just waited to this stage to start worrying or caring about the pencil direction and length to create the fur texture. But I find it adds just that much more of a layer of detail, especially when you're working really small like I am here. This is a rather small drawing. And to maximize that detail showing up, if you maintain that pencil discipline from the very beginning by always keeping your pencil strokes in the direction that the fur is growing and the length of your pencil strokes at the length of the fur, I just find that the result that you get is superior than if you were to just kind of color it in with little to no regard to those important ideas. Will I be doing a cat too? Perhaps I will do a cat. I won't be doing a cat today, but yeah, maybe I'll grab a picture of a cat or something like that and do a pastel piece of a cat. I did. Jamie, aren't you over on Patreon? I'm pretty sure you're on Patreon. I have a cat drawing tutorial that I did last year. I think it was last year. Maybe it was 2 years ago. No, I'm pretty sure it was last year. But I have a cat drawing over there. It's not pastels if you're looking for pastel, but goodness, it's colored pencils, and it's about it would be about the same. Do I have a dog? No, I do not have any pets. I've considered getting a pet, but I don't go through with getting a pet because I like my ability to just do whatever I want whenever I want. For instance, this Saturday, my lovely wife and I went to Krakow, and we just wake up and leave. Like, we don't have to leave and feel bad that there's an animal sitting in our flat, probably having to go to the bathroom, and if not going to the bathroom, probably doing it all over our bed or something like that. So that's kind of the reason I don't have a pet, because I don't want that responsibility. Yeah, no easier way to put it. I just don't want the responsibility. And I'm planning on going back to America probably in November, and this time Anna will be lucky enough to have the time off work to come with me, and we're going to be there for like 2 weeks most likely, and that's just like another reason not to have a pet, because otherwise we wouldn't really be able to plan trips like that. We don't have anybody here that would be able to like take care of our pets when we're gone, so it's just easier not having any. But I would love one. I was actually thinking about getting a snake. I've always wanted a snake, and I love snakes. They're just such awesome creatures. And you only have to feed it once a week, so it'd be kind of easy to just still be able to do whatever I want. Yeah, Jamie, we're not planning on kids. We're not planning on any kids. Can I draw a backlit fur for your next animal tutorial? Backlit fur? You mean like an animal that has the light source behind it? Because changing the lighting won't really change anything about the process that I would take to draw, to draw anything. It wouldn't matter what the subject is. but the planning and everything would be identical, the colors, the colors would change, and where I place the colors would change, but in the overall scheme of things, I would just be approaching the drawing the same exact way that I'm approaching this right now. If it's backlit, I most likely would add a background, because when the lighting would change like that, I probably wouldn't just be able to leave the back of this blank and white here, because then it wouldn't establish that light source as much. But other than that, everything would really just stay the same as far as like how to do it. And the tutorial would be very, very similar to this one here. But I can't guarantee something as specific as that, simply because I don't have animals to take my own reference photos of, and so it's at the discretion of the good reference photos that I can find, and I'm probably more picky than I should be when it comes to my reference photos. I'm rather picky about my reference photos. Probably more picky than most. I see some really great artwork based on reference photos all the time, and when I see the work, I'm like, oh, I really like the way that came out. And when I look at the reference photo, I was like, I don't think I would have drawn that reference photo, which costs me, maybe creating some nice pieces simply because the reference photo doesn't speak to me the way it did to the person that drew from it, and they create something lovely, and I would miss out on it because I would feel like the reference photo is not up to my standards. I was looking through quite a bit of photos today just to find this dog. I didn't really know what I wanted to draw today, and so this reference photo just happened to work out really well, fortunately enough. Good night, everyone. Always love your work. Not sure why that's a question. Do you know when you'll continue this? I am just going to be continuing this while you sleep, Jamie. So I hope you have a good night, and you can watch the rest of it when you wake up, I suppose. Thanks for coming by. Always enjoy having you. I'm probably gonna work on. Actually, I'll probably work on this for another half hour. I'd love to have the dishes done before my wife gets home. Otherwise, she might be kind of grumpy. So, gotta do my chores for the day. All right, let's do a little bit more blending. Yeah, maybe I'll just try to finish up the face and the head today, since that's about as far as I perceive me getting. So I'm just going to grab my blending stump here and smooth out all that new texture that I created very, very lightly. It's going to make this is just going to make the fur very soft looking. And then I will add more layers. And with each layer, the fur gets closer and closer to what I want it to look like, while still leaving some of that lovely fur texture in there without blending it too hard. I'm not pressing into the paper at all with this blending stump. I'm literally like brushing it almost like it's a paintbrush. Better get on it, Chris. If you guys have any other questions, don't hesitate to ask. Like I said, I never get enough questions. Never get enough questions. Maybe that's a good sign of my my ability to teach, is that the less questions I have, the more I can expect that you understand everything that I'm doing, because my explanations are so well articulated. That's my hope. I don't want to make anything that I do a mystery. I try to make it very obvious what it is that I am doing and why I'm doing it. I want more people to be able to create work like this. How do reference photos work? How do they work? I'm not sure I understand the question. Like I find a picture, I look at it, and then I draw it. Like, if anything, the reference photos don't do anything. I'm the one doing it. Maybe rephrase the question, CC. I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. Alright, got some good colors here. I think I'm going to go back to my gray, wherever it is. Where are you at, gray? Here it is. Yeah, I'm going to incorporate a bit more gray in here. Bring out the texture and the highlights a bit. Tone down some of those orange colors that are showing up a bit too heavily. Oh, how do I get my reference photos? I get them from several websites. I really like Upsplash and Pixabay. Is it Pixabay? Yeah, I think it's called Pixabay. I like those sites. They're free reference photos. And then I also use, what is that, Shutterstock? Okay, I barely use Shutterstock. You have to pay for those, but if I'm using a reference photo that I need to monetize or have rights to, like guaranteed, I'll use Shutterstock. But if I'm just doing like a live tutorial like this, I'm not making money from this. I'm not using this reference photo for commercial uses, so I could use whatever photo I want. If I'm teaching, if I'm using it to teach something, then the copyright stuff doesn't apply because the tutorial is free for everybody. So I can use whatever pictures that I want. So I could just Google image if I wanted. Sometimes I do that. Occasionally I'll just Google image, but what I won't do is then supply the reference photo as royalty free. Like I always make it known whether or not the reference photo can be used. This particular reference photo, it is from Upsplash, and it is uploaded by the original photographer for royalty free use. So I will not sell this portrait of the dog. I didn't have any intention of selling it. I I mean, I suppose if somebody wanted to buy it legally, I would be allowed to sell it, but I don't, I don't, I don't generally list any of my artwork to sell because so few people have ever showed any interest in buying it. Usually, I just give it away. I do a giveaway or something like that where people can win some of my original pieces. This picture would probably end up being in a giveaway if it turns out to look halfway decent. Uh, well, if you just tag me, I can see what you're typing really easily. Caps lock is actually not helpful. If you just do the at Unmask Art, it shows up yellow or it shows up orange for me. And that's much easier for me to see. I actually almost missed your question there. Let's see here. I need to add some more texture, a little bit more detail. I think the gray is good. Maybe. No, I'm not ready for that. I'm looking for the color that I need. Looking for a color. Do I want to go darker? Yeah, I think I'm going to go a little bit darker in some spots. I think this brown might be helpful. I'm going to sharpen it really quick. Get a nice sharp tip on it for some details. Alright, let's start over here in this ear. I think this needs to be a bit darker. Do I have trouble with the paper not taking more layers? No, not usually, because I don't make as many mistakes as I used to, and I don't fill up the paper too fast. I take my time with the colors, and I just I use really, really light layers. I don't even have that problem very much with regular colored pencils because of how light I press. In my general rule that I'm always saying in my tutorials are, never press harder than what you need to get the color to show up. And that amount of pressure is even lighter when using pastel pencils because the pressure that you need to have in order for the pastel pencils to show up on the paper is like virtually none at all. And so I never really feel like I run out of the texture of the paper to get my color to show up the way that I want. Usually what ends up happening is that I just can't get the exact color blend, and I end up just kind of finessing the work for like forever, getting the right balance of the colors plus value, because I don't want to just come in here with black and start darkening things excessively. I think I do actually need to come in here with black and darken up around the eyes a little. They're looking a little too bright for me. Maybe this crease along the side of the ear. Need to make sure I get the right contrast here around the eyes to get them to look right. And then I can grab my white pencil and just do a tiny little touch in the highlight that I have there on the eye, just bringing it out a tiny bit more. There we go. Just sharpen it up. And take that black and for this part of the ear that separates from the head, I think I can get in there and add just a small line of black, getting that separation to be a bit more clear, and underneath the lip right there. Little mustache needs to be a bit darker. See, when you add black over top of all your other colors, it won't be actually black, so it's safe to use it. Safe to use it in those rare cases. I have done this picture with macro Renard color pencils, following your instructions to pastel pencils. It works okay if the purpose is to learn. It was my first time with colored pencils. Oh, well, that's cool. Oh, hello, Wicked Illusions. So you just bought the Introduction to Pastel course. So you should receive an email that has the download links to all of the files in the course. That's what you will receive. And then once you download it, you have the course for life. And you can watch it a billion times if you want. And thank you, by the way, for getting the course. I hope that you have fun with it. Many people have had a lot of fun with it, and I've enjoyed seeing everybody's work come from it as well. I've seen a lot of the pieces come to life, and it's really great to see. It's just awesome to see. Alright, let's see, maybe add a few more strokes of the dark brown in here. A little bit right in there. Alright. You know what? Earlier in the stream I was talking about this 642 color. And for some reason, I'm starting to see it in the fur. So I'm going to add it. And this is that ninja purple that I was kind of going on about a little bit in the beginning. And I said that it kind of only shows up down here on the stomach skin. But now that I keep looking back and forth, and I'm seeing the gray in the fur. I'm seeing a lot of gray in the fur, actually. But I was missing this purple transition color, And this color is going to be very key in repairing like the transitions that I was missing a little bit. This color is just too important. This color shows up in everything. I use this color. I think I've used this color in every single pastel piece that I've ever done, ever. It's always there, no matter what I do. I always see this color showing up everywhere. Portraits, this, landscapes. Ninja Purple is just everywhere. Ninja Purple is not actually the name of this color, by the way. I think it's Clay Rose. Can you erase pastel? Yeah, you can a little bit. You can erase it a little bit with a kneaded eraser. Will lift up a bit of the pastel if you need to, kind of do a bit of correcting. I mean, it's not gonna be perfect though. Yeah, it has its limitation to how well you can erase with it, but you can do a little bit of erasing. Alright, I'm going to do a bit more blending now, if I can find my blending stump. And again, just very lightly brushing the fur. Almost brushing it like the puppy was alive. And I wanted to get rid of all the loose fur. Very, very softly. Preserving as much of the detail as I can, but just softening it a bit. Oh, hello, Alex. Glad you were able to make it to the live stream. I always enjoy seeing familiar names pop across the live chat. Alright, that fur looks pretty good. I think what I'll do is that one color that I started with, that light cream color, I'm going to just give it a quick sharpen with my sanding block here. Get a really nice fine tip, and then I will use it to create some little flyaway furs. Needs to be a little bit sharper than that. There we go. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, now it's nice and sharp. And I'm just going to come up here, and this might be bright enough. Yeah, it's bright enough. I'm going to come up here and just do really, really thin lines through the highlights. And I'm just going to keep turning the pencil with each line that I do. Try to keep that tip as sharp as I can for as long as I can. Probably do the whiskers with this color as well. Let's see, there's a little bit of a highlight here. I can highlight right along that edge of the ear, like that. Maybe a few lighter strands coming from inner part of the ear. And then up here, breaking up the monotony of that kind of shadow. And then this shadow here, bringing some of these lighter flyaways across it. And this will add quite a bit of extra texture to the fur. Oh, thank you, Robin. What am I using for blending pastels? So I'm using just this blending stump. This is one of those paper blending stumps that you often use with graphite pencils. Alright, let's add a few highlight lines down here. Let's see, where else? Right up here at the top of the, in between the eyes. There we go. That's better. Starting to really shape up now. I'm gonna take, let's see, I'm gonna take this color here. What is this? This is 680. In those little dots that you find where the whiskers come out of, I'm gonna add those little dots with this color, I think. And they just kind of create this pattern around here. Add those little dots with a quick scrape of the pencil. Oh, let's see, where else am I seeing texture? Well, I think that's pretty good. This drawing is rather small, so I can't do too much. I'm going to grab the black and do just a bit of an outline with the nose where I collected some excess dust. Just make that nose pop out just slightly more. Fill in the nostrils again. Maybe add a little bit of black into some of the fur where it's the darkest. Very subtly. I'm going to take my blender and I'm going to soften this little triangle here. It shows up really, like it shows up a lot in the reference photo, this triangle, but I want to soften the edge just a bit. As much as I can, really. That way it's not so much of a triangle, a little less of a triangle. There we go. And I think I can darken the left side of the face. Let's see, what brown do I want to use? I think I'm going to use this brown. This is 635. It's more of a neutral brown, just like a true brown. Doesn't really have any excess red in it. So I'm just going to use this to do some darkening this side of the face. There we go. And take my blender, soften it. That way I maintain that fur-like texture. Get rid of the pencil grain. Add just a little bit more of this brown, creating some of those very obvious fur lines through some of these lighter areas. Similar to how I used the light cream color to add a few individual hairs showing. That's what I'm going to do with this color. Let's grab the Ninja Purple, the 642. That highlight there is a little bit too bright, so I'm just going to cover it up with that color. Soften it a bit. At this stage of the drawing, it's just kind of like working back and forth, adding some detail, removing some detail, softening, adding some highlights, adding some shadows, and you just kind of want to play around with your colors a little bit until you find the right balance in the image overall. So that's where I'm at right now. Just kind of going back and forth with my colors till I get the right look, the exact look that I want. Something like that. You sound like a wizard for real. Interesting. Oh, okay, Chrissy. Thanks so much for coming by. I'll probably see you tomorrow or Thursday. I might stream over on Patreon tomorrow to do some of the fairy tale drawing that we've been working on. Why does the dog have a line in his right eye? His right eye or our right of his eye? This line here, is that what you're referring to? Yeah, this line here is a little thick. Just one of those details that has to be softened a little bit. He has kind of the fur bunching up around his eyes. There we go. I think that's good for the face of the dog. Perhaps I will continue streaming tomorrow or Wednesday, or I don't know what day. I'll try to plan it out. I'll try to schedule it out a little bit earlier than I did today's stream. I know that I didn't give much notice for today's stream. And for that I apologize, but the next time I work on this puppy here, I think what I will do is schedule the stream a day in advance, or try to get it at least a day in advance. That way you guys have a bit more notice and you can prepare. But I think that's going to be it for today. I'm going to go do some dishes now because that's how I live my life. And anyways, thank you all so much for coming by and hanging out. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Hope you learned something. and I will continue working on this as soon as I schedule out the stream, and we'll finish up the body of the dog, and I'm going to add a drop shadow down at the bottom as well once I finish the fur. That way he sets on the page a little bit more. And if you are interested in learning more from me, I have a Patreon page where I live stream very similar to today's live stream every Thursday, and sometimes more than Thursday, where I go over several projects. I have over 100 hours of tutorials already on my Patreon page, and as soon as you pledge, you have access to all of them. I teach you how to draw color with pastels, with colored pencils. I've done some graphite tutorials. I always supply you with reference photos and line art and color palettes, and I really am very thorough over on my Patreon page. So if you want to learn more from me, you can head over there, or you can buy one of my courses. I have an Intro to Colored Pencil course. I have an Intro to Pastel course, which I believe I have a link for in the description. And then I also just recently released my Colored Pencil Portrait course. It teaches you everything that I do when creating human portraits with colored pencils. So if that's interesting to you, then you can check that out. But that is going to be it for today. So thank you all again, and I will see you next time. Take care. Peace.